Alright guys, we have 14.8 MSI patch. Okay. Void Grubs. We're buffing Void Grubs this patch by buffing the damage and the number of grubs required to get the first grubs to summon spawn. We're separating the spawn time for Jargon a bit to make trading less of a reality, to have more teams engage in more conflict. Okay, so the first part, buffing damage, that's just a straight up buff for everything, right? Making number of grubs required to get the first grubs summoned to spawn. So they're gonna make it so if you have 4 grubs, you get 1 summon, and if you have 6, you get 2, I think. Which is like a slight buff, but the reality is that in competitive this doesn't really change anything, because most of the time a single jungler will get all 3 grubs, and then either 3 and 3 or 3 and then 3-3 split between both teams, right? Separating the spawn time for Jargon a bit to make a trading less of reality is an amazing change. Honestly, I really think this is such an amazing change. I would assume grubs are gonna spawn at like minute 4 maybe now, or 6. I don't know exactly what's gonna happen, but so many times macro play is so boring in high elo competitive simply due to like people just trading objectives between each other. It's just so bad, and this is just amazing. Baron attacks are a little too unthreatening right now. They're not intended to be super threatening, as powerful Baron attacks can cause issues with the game stalling out and teams being unable to take Baron. We also don't want to excessively overload players' mindshare when taking Barons, but we think there's some room to make them stronger. Okay. So Baron is going to probably do more damage. It's going to be equally squishy, so if you have a good Baron killing comp, Baron is kind of dying fast anyway. This is more about team comps that don't do a lot of damage, but then they can't afford to tank maybe the Baron that long. This is mainly going to impact early Barons, so we're talking between minute 20 to 25, because then champions don't have a lot of items. Usually after minute 25, people reach like 3+ items, so then people are... yeah, Baron is just not a threat anymore. Skarner. Skarner is doing a lot better as players play him, getting a decent amount of performance day over day, as expected. Every new champion is like this. We're targeting some nerfs to bring his top and jungle closer in line. We're looking to make some adjustments to make him smoother to play while trying to keep the impactful feeling of the boulder. Okay, so I think this part here means that they're probably going to make it so his Q is not that awkward anymore, because I think he's like very clunky, or his E maybe. I think his like cast animations take like a very long time, and that's what makes him clunky. As for top and jungle, I watched like one video of Skarner top lane, and it just looks like the champ is just like 0 skill shots. He's just spamming spells off cooldown. He doesn't have enough mana cost, so like last patch they already like went for mana cost, and maybe they're gonna go more on that. The W also like range is really big and stuff like that. Mordekaiser, so this is one of the biggest changes here. Pretty large change here, but making his ult not Q accessible. This change was originally done to prevent Morde from becoming a pro staple. As time has gone on, he has too much counterplay, especially the higher ranks and experientially. If you're picking Morde, you want this portion of his kit to be effective. Okay, so I kind of understand the thought process behind this decision. So first of all, low elo players will not buy as much QSSs as high elo players. So this will naturally buff Mordekaiser more in high elo than low elo, simply due to the fact that Mordekaiser is naturally a low elo SKU champion, okay? Second of all, the reason why Mordekaiser does feel very shit to play is because once people buy QSS, you're playing a champion with 3 spells. He really feels very, very lame to play. Now, the problem I have with these type of changes is that I just think it's going to be kind of like a balancing nightmare. Like, they're probably going to have to compensate nerf him. I would assume there's compensation nerfs coming in here. Because the reality is that Mordekaiser is just a brain-dead stat checker, something like of Volibear or Renekton. He's very similar to those type of champions, Sat as well to an extent, right? And either he beats you or he doesn't. Now, let me walk you back in time. If you guys remember when Mordekaiser rework was first released, there was like a meme back then where Mordekaiser would just buy Seeker's Armguard and Tabe, and he would win like a 2-item ADC in his ult realm. There was like a huge meme back in the day and stuff like that. Now there's a lot of champions that are naturally good into Mordekaiser, and even if Mordekaiser ults them, like stuff like Vayne for example, this is not really going to change anything, right? Like if Mordekaiser will not be able to usually outduel a Vayne in a round, but what will happen is that now that USS will not be working on Mord ult, there will be a new play which will be basically flash ult as Mord, the ADC or something like that. You will be able to flash ult the ADC as Mordekaiser, and yeah, the ADC will oftentimes have no fucking counterplay. What about GP Orange? GP Orange will still work on this. Is Mordekaiser gonna be played in pro because of this change? I honestly don't think so. I think he's still too weak, even if ult doesn't do, even if QSS doesn't do anything into ult. But I think just in solo queue, this is a massive buff for solo queue Mord. Azir. Azir has been too present after re-entering the pro meta. Okay, so Riot will finally nerf Azir. There's been a lot of Reddit threads complaining that, you know, Azir mid lane meta is super stale, and Azir every game in pro is way too safe. He really brings boring gameplay, which I agree. I also don't think it will take them a lot. I don't think it will take a lot to nerf on Azir to make him auto pro. I really don't think so. I actually think he's like really close on the verge of like dying really fast if they just nerf a little bit of damage off him or something like that. Personally, I think they should probably just make his early game weaker. This is something they've done in the past. They kept making his early game weaker and late game fine. I think they should just keep going in that direction. His W should probably just deal less damage to base points, and probably the scale should go a bit up. So late game he's not affected, but early game he's just weaker. That's what I would do. Briar, too effective in especially the lower ranks. Even though her win rates are being propped up by Skarner low ones, they're still too high. Okay, so Briar has been nerfed probably about 5 to plus times in a row now. This is going to keep happening because they go on very light nerfs on Briar, but the thing that happens is that Briar keeps going up in win rate over time and time and time because people have finally learned to master the mechanic on her W. This champion has about between 54 to 55% win rates on from like iron to gold, something like that. She's basically the best champion in the game, pretty much in lower MMRs. This is why they're nerfing her. This is going to keep happening. I mean, unless they do a really hard nerf, they're probably going to keep having to nerf her for low elo, like for a long time. Zac, while he isn't technically overpowered, his laning phase is relatively uninteresting. We're looking to tap him down a little bit, especially to make sure jungle is still his most powerful role. Okay, so we're probably gonna see a monster mod damage going up on Zac, and probably, I would assume, a passive sustain going down on passive. This is something they tried to do last time, and then they didn't put it into the patch. I hope this time they actually just nerf his passive. I completely agree with them. Zac does have a very uninteresting gameplay, but this is not just a Zac problem. This is actually a tank problem. If you would have Ornn, or maybe even Sion, or maybe like, I don't know what's a brain that tank, but basically tanks just provide usually pretty boring gameplay, especially in higher Elon pro play. This is just reality of the video game. Zeri. After the crit item changes have shaken out, Zeri has emerged as one of the biggest beneficiaries of these changes. We're tapping her down and her regular performance is still pretty healthy. We're feeling a lot more confident about her long-term balance after all the changes. She's a bit too strong right now. I mean, I agree, right? I don't think Zeri is necessarily that much of a big of a problem. She's probably just a bit too strong right now. What they could do easily is just revert some of the AD they gave her some time ago. But honestly, she already received a static shield nerf this patch, which should probably impact her a bit more than other champions because she's way more reliant on static shield than other champions. And so he talked only about nerfs, or maybe like system changes, which aren't a lot here. But you can see when you open patch preview, which we don't have the numbers yet, there's a lot of champions buffs. So we should really talk about this. So the reason why I think this is such an amazing patch, and I hope the changes are big. This might be one of the best patches Riot has done in a long time. This is the type of patch Riot should do every single year. One patch before MSI drops and one patch before Worlds drops, in my opinion, Riot should completely shake up the game. And this is kind of looking like it back. Now, the reason why I think this is such an amazing patch is because most of these champions actually deserve a buff, in my opinion. Some of these champions are actually good to watch in pro, such as, for example, Sylas or Ryze, because we haven't seen them in a long time, especially Sylas. Quay. There's a lot here. They have finally realized a lot of the problems, which is mid lane meta is giga stale, okay? They have actually targeted a lot of champions buffs on mid lane here. I know people are gonna be like, Yone. Yeah, Yone is first of all a fantastic champion for pro play. Second of all, he actually is fine about getting a buff. And this is basically the reason why this is happening, such a big shakeup, is because of pro play. This is basically because of MSI. Most of these changes are pretty much MSI. Some of these champions do not deserve buffs, by the way. Viego. I don't think Viego should be on this list. Like, if I were to single targetly, point a champion that I think shouldn't be on the list, I would probably say Viego should never be on this list. But yeah. It's again, because Viego is kind of exciting to watch for pro because he has like a lot of pop-off moments with his passive and stuff like that. So going one by one, Akali, this is simply to put Akali and Sylas into the meta. You can see Akali and Sylas, those two champions are usually buffed simultaneously if you go through time. This is because usually when Akali enters meta, the champion that people mostly use historically against Akali is Sylas. And also, by the way, Rice. So this is why they buffed especially those three together. Okay, they're trying to basically shake up pro meta. They're not nerfing anything, but they're buffing champions in hopes that some of these champions can enter the meta and then shake up mid lane pro meta, right? Javen, does Javen deserve a buff? I don't know, probably not. He's probably like a pretty good champion in pro play skill levels. Sorry, really high elo. Like, this is only a high elo MMR change anyway, and yeah, I mean, this is like what, G2 Hansama buff, I guess. Galio. Galio is probably not a pro buff. Galio is probably just a buff because he's just so shit after the latest changes that Freak put into the game. I tried him and I just genuinely think the champion is trash, so this is totally deserved. Graves, this is to shake up jungle meta. Graves hasn't been in meta in some time. I kinda wish they would give him mana lower cost, so simultaneously they would buff Graves top, and maybe Graves solo lane would become a thing. Gwen, to make Gwen counter pick be happen more times, especially in pro. Hui, I thank God I've been asking for Hui buffs for God knows. I'm really excited to see them. Jarvan, Jarvan's I think is fine to buff. Jarvan will come eventually into pro. Jarvan's already on the verge of being really good into pro IMO, and Jarvan will probably be played on MSI, I would assume. He's really good, especially when people play mobile champions. He's just so good at his ult is just so valuable against every champion that doesn't have a dash. Jhin, totally fine. I think Jhin deserves a buff. Kai'Sa, I would say also totally fine. I mean, she technically just got a shield nerf, and she was kind of the weaker ADCs. She didn't benefit from crit item changes, while something like Jinx did. This is fine. LeBlanc buff, I mean, she kind of does deserve a buff, and this is literally just a pro-specific buff, to be honest. Olaf, probably will be Olaf jungle, I would assume. Silas, totally deserved, I think. Thresh, totally fine too. Viego, I wouldn't personally put that one. Yon, I think this is fine. And then we have Azir, this is good. Briar, solo queue oriented. This is Zac, this is fine. And Zeri. Okay, I mean, I just hope the changes on the buffs are nice. Like, that's all. Like, I'm not gonna overreact to something before I see the numbers. But yeah, that's the patch, guys. I'm personally happy because there's a lot of mid lane changes. Now, hold on. Let me actually just talk about this. Did they put everything on the patch? Did they put everything on the patch? No, they did not. They tricked you guys. Which champion is missing on this patch that they wanted to nerf 5 times now, and each patch they have an excuse to nerf her? I wonder, guys. Janna, where is she? Where is she, guys? She just somehow dodged another nerf 2 patches ago. Yeah, we're nerfing support items. We don't know how it's gonna affect Janna. 1 patch later, yeah, we're nerfing this on support. We don't know how it's gonna affect Janna. We're gonna wait for another patch. This patch, no support nerfs, no Janna nerf. Another excuse, I guess, happens. But yeah, which other champion have they missed? Janna is like the most obvious champion they should instantly be touching, and they're not. I'm trying to think, like, what is another champion they kind of missed? Asol. Oh yeah, Asol. Okay, so here's my prediction. Here's my prediction about Asol. I think Asol will get hard nerfed after MSI. They're going to literally intentionally keep him at MSI because we know he's going to be permaplayed by pros, because right now he's already popping off. After MSI, I think he's gone. That's what I think is going to totally happen to Asol. Where is Victor and Anivia buffs? So Anivia buff probably doesn't happen because, first of all, her solo queue win rate is way too high, and second of all, pro players are not Anivia players, so even if she is really good, pro players will probably not play her, so the buff will be useless. And Victor buff, I think, would need way more than Riot can give him for pro players to even consider picking him. I think he's just that weak. So I think pro players would never pick Victor. He would need too much of a buff, that's why they wouldn't even try to buff him. That's my theory on why those two, for example, aren't buffed here.